Thank you. Last summer, I hosted a dinner party, and one of my guests walked in wearing cowboy boots that she had bought in a secondhand shop. And just like that, the dinner stopped being about food. Suddenly, we were talking about boot stories. One person told about his favorite pair of boots that were way too small, but he squeezed his feet in them anyway. Another person recalled working for months as a teen in East Berlin to buy a pair of shiny white patent leather boots, and how powerful she felt when she wore them. Different boots, different lives, but the same emotions. Independence, nostalgia, coming of age. And that's what stories do. One story wakes up another and another. Tonight we've heard, or all day we've heard stories. For example, from Andreas, the image of the boy on the diving board. Perhaps they woke up your own stories. And all this makes me wonder, are stories just for entertainment, or do we actually need them to survive? Let me tell you not one story, but a chain of many stories that have shaped my life, and why I believe stories shape all of our lives. First off, I love stories. Before I worked with words, I was a choreographer, and I told stories with bodies, dancers, movement. I created within a community of artists, performed in different cities, slept on many different couches, until I became a mom. And this freelance lifestyle, performing arts, became complicated. So suddenly, I'm home alone, a single mom. I miss my tribe. I miss my family, they're far away. I miss my profession. And most of all, I miss my purpose. I feel alone. And on one of those days, while I'm digging out Lego blocks from between the sofa cushions, I think, okay, Dyane, what now? I didn't know what I was looking for. 7 years later, something landed in my hands. A book. True personal stories told live on stage at the Moth. I read the book, and when I was finished, I read it again. These aren't fairy tales, these are short, honest, first-person stories. Real people facing real obstacles. And when I would take all these stories and strip them down to their essence, what remained was the same. Love, loss, fear, disappointment. And I thought, I am hooked. Berlin needs something like this. And I know it's an absolutely crazy idea, and I think about it for 3 weeks. I pick up the phone and I call the Moth's New York City office. Hello, this is Dyane Neiman. I'm calling for the city of Berlin. We absolutely love what you do. Could you bring the Moth to Berlin? They say no. But they add something unexpected. They say, why don't you start your own Moth-inspired show in Berlin? I hang up the phone. No venue, no audience, no storytellers, and no money. But I start this monthly open stage for true personal stories, and I call it the Bear because of the word inside, ear. It's a place built around listening. And every month, after the crowd disappears and the room goes quiet, there I am, stacking chairs, counting coins, carrying beer crates, alone. And when I finally get home at 2 a.m., I'm exhausted. My back hurts. Ping! The first email arrives. When can you send the video of my story? And I think, why are you doing this? And when I lie in bed, I can't sleep. All the stories from that evening are replaying in my head. These stories won't let me go, like the night Carl stood on stage. So Carl was a member of the gay community in San Francisco. And for years, this community fought for marriage equality. And when the law finally changed, he and his partner were among the first to marry. Later, their relationship fell apart. Carl filed for divorce, and his community turned against him. They were angry, disappointed. How could you give this up after everything we fought for? Carl's heartbroken. He's alone. And at work, a straight male colleague notices something's wrong, and Carl tells him what's up. And this man, he doesn't argue, he doesn't debate politics and identity. He goes up to Carl and hugs him, says, "Hey, I've been through a divorce too." And I look out at the audience and I think, how many people there are in a same-sex marriage? And yet, every single person in that room is moved. They don't need Carl's life to recognize his feelings, loss, grief, loneliness, and the relief of finally being understood. You don't need the same life to recognize the same feelings. Stories bridge our differences, and they also bridge generations. Another evening, our volunteer Ash brought 11 university friends, seats them in the front row, and then a 75-year-old woman named Sylvia takes the stage. And she recalls growing up in Cold War Berlin, arriving at the university, knowing exactly one thing she wants to learn about: sex. She describes her first lover. He's part of a leftist student book club, wearing Che Guevara on his chest, dreaming for change, convinced that his generation can do it better than their parents. But romance has to wait while they finish a big pot of baked beans that his mother had sent for dinner. And that moment that Sylvia had imagined is not the moment that arrives. But the laughter that follows lasts a lifetime. Sylvia isn't lecturing them about history. She's sharing her vulnerability. Stories collapse time. They pass experience from one generation to the next without a textbook. And I start to recognize a pattern. Stories turn strangers into humans. On a Friday night, people arrive, often alone, and they leave somehow connected through this shared human experience. And this same pattern is what drives me, it keeps me going, and it keeps people coming back. Psychologists at Emory University studied how family stories affect teens. And they created a test with questions like, it's called Do You Know? With questions like, do you know how your parents met? So I'm going to ask you all, do you know how your parents met? Do you know where your grandparents grew up? Do you know a story from your parents' childhood? So just notice that. Teens who knew more of these stories showed stronger identity and a greater feeling for emotional resilience. Researchers call this an intergenerational self, feeling that you belong to something bigger than yourself. So stories anchor us and give us roots so we can fly. And they also prepare us. One storyteller has 10 minutes to pack a backpack as the bombs fall. Another has 15 minutes to decide what to put into a trash bag before leaving her home, probably forever. And as we listen, we think, what would I take? When crisis comes, the brain remembers, I've been here before in a story. And that rehearsal helps us survive crisis. It also helps us practice choices before the stakes are real. Stories are a dress rehearsal for life. These storytelling evenings allow me to experience the emotional power of stories. My work as a story coach, I see the practical power. So one day, it's a Friday, 5:30 p.m., my phone rings. It's a woman named Sophia. We are preparing a pitch for our business idea for a panel of investors. And from 100 teams, we've made it to the final 6. Can you help us? And so I review Sophia's team's pitch. It's strong, clear, data-driven. No, I can't help you. Why not? I can't help you because you don't have a story. Without a story, how can the panel see this idea that doesn't exist yet? How can they feel that it matters? The next week, Sophia calls up. Dyane, we have a story. It's 8-year-old Nami in rural Kenya. Her name is handwritten on a worn paper record book, and one day it's overlooked. She misses her vaccine, she contracts measles, she becomes blind, and loses her hearing. Sophia's team is still hesitant. We only have 4 minutes. How can we waste time on a story? They decide to take a risk. They give Nami 45 seconds, and then they retell it using 2 words. What if? What if her name had been digitally logged in, automatically flagged? What if she had received the vaccine on time? And as I'm watching the live stream, one team after another, all 5 other ones, brilliant ideas, creative solutions, there's charts, metrics, features. Only one team tells a story. They win the funding and the audience prize. Yeah, data informed the panel, but story decided the outcome. And as Rolf said to us today, close your eyes and see the future. Well, stories help us imagine futures and ideas that don't exist yet. Which brings me down to my question. Are stories just entertainment, or do we need them to survive? So what drove me first was my passion for stories. What kept me going was witnessing something profound. In a world that's growing more isolated, mistrustful, these open stage evenings, I saw a place where strangers could connect through the simple act of listening. What saved me wasn't storytelling for its own sake. It was storytelling as a shared human practice. When we listen together, we're not just passing time. We're building a nervous system that spans the globe. We are creating an intergenerational self that says, I am because you are. The world is changing rapidly. Technology is disrupting how we live, work, connect. We scroll more, we gather less, we feel more divided and alone. One thing has always saved us, and always will: sharing our stories. And yet, we live in a flood of story, endless, polished, consumed alone. The stories I'm talking about ask something different from us. They require presence. And after an entire day together, listening together, being present, I think this is the right way to end. If you believe that stories told and listened to in community still matter, if you believe that presence is an act of resistance, if you believe that connection gives us courage, then I invite you to take out your phones. You're allowed to take out your phones, and I invite you to turn on your light. Let it be a quiet vow to listen more than we scroll, to tell our own stories, even when our voices shake, and to stay human together. Thank you.